Explainer: Australia's nuclear-powered submarine deal is fueling anger in the country. Here's why, but it's not only the French who are furious. Anti-nuclear groups in Australia, and many citizens, are expressing anger over the deal, worried it may be a Trojan horse for a nuclear power industry, which the nation has resisted for decades. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern spoke personally to her Australian counterpart, Scott Morrison, to tell him the vessels would not be welcome in the waters of her country, which has been a no-nuclear zone since 1984. So what's all the fuss about? Here's why some Australians are bothered by this deal. How is nuclear power made? Nuclear power is the world's second-largest contributor of low-carbon electricity after hydropower, according to the International Energy Agency. It accounts for around 10% of the world's electricity, generated by just over 440 power reactors. The power comes from a process known as nuclear fission, which involves the splitting of uranium atoms in a reactor that heats water to produce steam. This steam is used to spin turbines, which in turn produce electricity.
While the process itself generates no emissions, greenhouse gases are generally emitted during the mining of uranium, and the enrichment process can be carbon-intensive. Is nuclear renewable? The simple answer is no. The energy produced by nuclear power plants is in itself renewable, and the steam produced in nuclear reactors can be recycled and turned back into water to be used again in the nuclear fission process. Many groups that oppose nuclear power, however, do so because of the environmental destruction caused by uranium mining. Governments in many parts of the world are relying on nuclear energy to help decarbonize their economies. It is widely regarded as an efficient way of producing electricity, and depending on the energy used to mine and enrich the uranium, it could potentially be a zero-emissions power source. Beyond its low-carbon credentials, nuclear power is considered to have the highest capacity factor of any energy source, which means nuclear plants run at maximum power for more of the time than other types. In the US, they run at high capacity 92.5% of the time, government data shows. For coal, it's around 40%, and wind is around 35%. Nuclear power can prevent millions of tons of emissions from entering the atmosphere each year, compared to fossil fuels. Sounds great. So why are so many Australians against it? It's not just Australia. Several countries have put the brakes on further development of the nuclear power industry since the 2011 Fukushima disaster in Japan. The Fukushima Daiichi power plant lost power in an earthquake and tsunami, which meant the cooling systems failed, leading to nuclear meltdowns and hydrogen explosions, and sending harmful radiation into the atmosphere. Parts of the city remain off limits. It was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl in 1986, when a test that went wrong triggered an explosion and fire, releasing devastating amounts of radioactive material into the air. 31 people were killed in the accident itself, while many more died from the effects of radiation exposure in the following years, with some estimates in the tens of thousands. There are also concerns around how to safely store nuclear waste. Explosions or leaks of stored waste can impact human health too, though such disasters are far less common than they once were. In 1977, the movement against uranium mining in Australia collected 250,000 signatures for a moratorium on extracting the metal, even though nuclear power wasn't being used in the country. But Australia still mines the metal today and exports it to generate nuclear power in other parts of the world. When announcing the New Deal, Morrison said Australia was not seeking to develop civil nuclear capability which would include nuclear power plants. But Greens party leader Adam Band criticised the agreement in a tweet as putting floating Chernobyls in the heart of Australia's cities, saying it makes Australia less safe. Bob Brown, a former Greens leader who campaigned against nuclear warships coming into Tasmania in the 1980s, told the Financial Review on Thursday the deal put the country closer to developing a nuclear energy industry and warned of a backlash. "I think it's very cowardly what the government's done," Brown said. It's made a decision without reference to the public, knowing the public would oppose it. And what's New Zealand's stance? New Zealand is one of the few developed countries that does not have any nuclear reactors whatsoever. It also has a zero nuclear zone which prevents nuclear weapons or nuclear ships from entering into its territory. In September 1978, the New Zealand government released a Royal Commission of Inquiry into nuclear power, and a decision was made for the country to use its own resources to produce electricity, rather than implementing nuclear plants. New Zealand's anti-nuclear stance applies to nuclear power, nuclear-powered vessels, and nuclear weapons.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.